This is the World Innovators Podcast with your host, Donna Peterson.
Hi there. My name is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the World Innovators Podcast, where I talk with business owners and marketing executives all over the world about their industry, what trends and tactics they have seen working, and what tips they can give us so that we can help improve our marketing. But the problem is, I'm always looking and reading about strategy, but the one part I don't hear much about is how do you execute it? So I've decided to put together a two-part series. One is about strategy, and I went back over our first 15 episodes and pulled out the top takeaway from each one of the episodes. And then the second part, which you'll hear next week, is about executing it. How do you execute the strategies that you've been learning about? Because they're no good if you don't execute them. So I went back over the last 15 episodes, and you're going to hear about, the industry, about goals, and about tactics. And so I hope you listen in and get some great insight on your new cohesive strategy that you can put together.
I think with marketing, it's all about building relationships and community, a sense of community, and more so now than ever, there's a real need for community. And I think that's another, that's something else that's really bringing B2C and B2B together. Whereas B2B, it was, you reached out to one person or you reached out to the company, but people want to be able to connect with other customers. And they just everyone wants to have that sense of community and what's working and what's not working. So that's really becoming an expectation, and companies are going to have to start thinking about incorporating that and building those modules into their business models as far as connecting their customers together.
I agree with all those points. And it's interesting because I'll speak to companies where, the upper executives are of the older mindset where it still has to be very professional and we still have to keep them separate. And so I find it's now an educational process. You need to educate them about, like you said, how these communities can help grow these relationships, that you can build upon. People
exactly.
Because otherwise people are just shopping around. And if you're just mediocre, or if they're just looking for price, they're going to find someone else at a lower price. But if you have that community, that relationship, that bond, that will be long-term, and they'll be back using your services over and over.
I agree. And I think that really came out of that was one of something that was sparked by the internet. I mean, before the internet, you tended to stick with one company because the work involved to try to find somebody else was just too difficult.
Right.
And, but with the internet, there's always like, well, I can go and I can find somebody else. I can get something for less. I mean, there's just a lot more out there.
Oh, you could Google it and research everything. And
exactly.
Reviews, that's why people have to understand putting that educational material or getting good reviews out there are important, because people are doing their research work almost before they contact you.
Self-service, and that is actually a trend that I see across all marketing.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of self-help and self-education and knowing where to go and knowing what to look for, and everything that you need is online, and it's accessible and it's easily found, and there is no reason to be at the mercy, if you like, of somebody else.
Right.
And that actually transcends all industries and all types of customer. They're very well educated now, so that is a distinct difference.
Yeah.
But I think one of the big things that you and I have talked about a fair amount is this kind of relationship building.
Yes.
That is a definite difference, huge difference. And it's almost become more dominant during sort of COVID and lockdowns. people want to do things with people they know, like, and trust.
Yes.
That's always been the case.
I totally agree with you on that. Yes.
Yeah. And relationships don't just happen.
No. You mean you can't just be my friend?
No. You've earned the right to be my friend.
Oh, come on. I'll pay you $5.
We don't get to just turn up and go, this is what I'm going to sell you. Isn't it great? Come and buy it. Whether that's a product, a service, B2C, B2B, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Gone are the days of people saying, I'm the best, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And the people who are still doing that, they're so wrong because they're still talking about themselves versus how can we help you?
Yeah.
You know,
there's lots and lots of people who still fail to grasp it. How are you going to help me? What are you going to do for me? What's in it for me? As the person buying the product or service. And it's like, well, we're the best and we're the biggest and we've been around for 200 years. And it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Sorry to be brutal, but I do not care. As the buyer, if you want my money, you're going to have to work a bit harder than that.
Well, some legacy companies feel that still is the case. You know, they don't need to show the love, you know, like you just said, I've been here forever. I've been here for 100 years. You know, World Innovators has been here for 40 years. And I still would not go out to people and say, well, you should work with us. I've been here for 40 years. No, you have to educate.
I think actually email responsiveness has actually gone up. But that does come down with a caveat. I think that has a lot more to do with segmentation of our data before we send the data out. So go back to the earlier point about the scattergun approach versus, you know, working in a niche. You know, as we moved a bit more across to being really niche about it, response rates have gone up.
Yeah.
It's more hard work, by the way, doing the niche stuff than scattered. Yeah, it's more hard work.
I've seen that also. You know, people come in and say, oh, email doesn't work anymore because people are being bombarded with messages. But like you just said, if you do the research and find the exact people that would be interested in what you have to offer, you know, they do want to receive the message. And I'm a big proponent with my clients, you know, just don't always be selling. Don't always be selling. You need to educate. And, you know, so give out some information, you know, maybe it's a blog you wrote or an upcoming webinar or something to educate or inform the individual, and then the sales.
I think that's correct. That's another channel that we're seeing is developing a bit more. I don't think anything groundbreaking saying this. You know, we've dipped our toe in and out of, what shall we call it, content marketing.
Yes.
Clumsy phrase, but over the years, we do have one publication, a proper publication within our group that's been going for a long time in the telecom space, but we've sort of dipped our toe in and out of doing blogs and other forms of sort of content marketing. And we are going back into that a bit more now, but trying to get a bit more quality in there than maybe we did in the past. Goes back to that email thing, that the scattergun versus niche. We sort of, you know, the old days of doing a blog is you create a blog with as much stuff as you could. And now we're saying, actually, you know, that didn't really work because everyone was doing it. You need to put stuff that people want to read.
Yeah, and make it very specific.
Yeah.
You know, like for me, you know, back when we started blogging, which was, I think, back in 2010 or 12, you know, I would write things just about marketing. Yeah. Well, that's not really going to bring me the, you know, B2B, you know, I'm in this specific niche sector. So, you know, slowly my titles have gotten more specific niche. And I think that's where companies will succeed if they find their specific niche and stay in that space.
I think that's correct. I think, you know, the world is all about niches. You know,
yes.
That's where you make your money. The big and broad things, you know, they're a different beast altogether. But really, you've got to be a specialist to be successful these days.
So now, how do you continue to keep your subscribers engaged with your publication?
So predominantly, we do two things. I mean, as you know, Donna, you know this well, across all publications, right? Content is king. Yes. You've got to have good content. You've got to have good content. But we look at it as more than just good content. I mean, and how do you define good content, really? What does that mean? So for us, we give our editors 3 jobs. We ask them to find it, to filter it, and to format it, right?
I like it.
The 3 Fs.
Yeah.
So, and it's difficult to find good content and or create good content, right? So that's the task, and we're continually educating our editors about what is useful to the captive heat treaters, that we're educating them continually. So we ask them to find it, and then they have to filter it. So, some of the stuff they find might not be exactly what our readers would be looking for. So we ask them to filter that stuff out, because there are services out there, to remain nameless, who basically will capture anything that has the word heat treat in it and present it to an audience. Okay, well, there's a lot of different things that say heat treat that really aren't appropriate to the heat treat market, right? For example, you don't want to Google hot oil, which is definitely a heat treat term, but when you Google it, you're going to get a lot of stuff you really don't want to get for the heat treat market, right? So that's not good. So we filter it. We find it, we filter it, and then probably one of the keys one of the ways we keep our audience engaged is we format it so that it's easily digestible.
Oh, that's a key. That's key.
It's key. They've got, we've got all of 30, depending on where they are, we've got anywhere from 3 to 30 seconds to capture their attention. So we try to do that. And we also format it in the sense that we'll deliver it to them in print. We'll deliver it to them in an e-newsletter. We'll deliver it to them audio through podcasts. We actually are one of the first and probably the most populated podcast producers in the heat treat industry. Yes, there is such a thing as a heat treat podcast.
I have listened to a few, even though they've been a little bit over my head, but I have listened to a few.
Yeah. Well, the dirty secret is most of them are over my head too. But if you ask the right questions, you're okay. So that's how we keep their attention. To answer your question, we find it, we filter it, we format it, and we're always continually educating ourselves as to what's of value to our readers.
But I've seen there's a lot more push towards branding and relationship marketing. And I would think, especially with the price of buying a franchise or multiple franchise, you definitely have to build a relationship with these people. They're not going to respond to a one-off email like buy a franchise. Oh yes, that's what I'll do today.
Great idea.
Why didn't I think of it?
Yeah.
I had this money sitting on my desk, so I thought I'd give you a call.
Figure out what I was going to do with it.
I remember I was talking to one of the people at the company we worked together, and they said, well, Donna, why don't you buy a franchise? And I'm like, well, I'm not sitting with that amount of money just sitting on my desk. So,
Oh,
silly me.
yeah.
So what do you see as your biggest, trends for the rest of 2021?
It's interesting because, 2020 kind of kicked everybody on their butts trying to figure out what to do. And interesting, franchising is going to come out very, very strong from it and already has. It didn't take too much of a dip, surprisingly. Certainly there's some brands who struggled, gyms, restaurants, and so on. But there's some brands who did extraordinarily well. And so it was a big opportunity for people to readjust and figure out, what am I going to do with my life? They probably got let go. They have money in the bank. They're trying to figure out, mentally everything changed. I want to be happy. I want to build my own thing. I don't want to be, and these small business owners, these mom and pop shops that couldn't make it because they didn't have the support of a bigger franchise system. So oftentimes we're seeing those people coming into a system now in the event that anything massive were to happen, that they've got support from more places than just themselves. So now we've got a bigger pool of people to fish for.
Right.
We're all fishing from the same pond and we're all going after the same person. So it's really been interesting because the relationship piece of it has been more difficult because we can't be face to face and we can't be in person. So everybody's gone digital. And I don't know if you've been on LinkedIn, and I love LinkedIn, but it is so saturated in InMail and posting. And it's like people are thinking this is the magic bullet because this is their new networking or this is their new relationship building. So we're really having to think outside the box. And I think the way we do that is diversifying our strategy, because everything support, a rising tide lifts all boats, so if we're here, and here, we can try and get all the people. But if we're focused only on here and everybody else is focused only on here, then that becomes a big challenge. And I don't know that there's one thing that's working over another thing, but they've all become increasingly difficult. And I've seen podcasting work. I've seen franchise brands starting their own podcasts, which is really interesting. I've seen franchise brands doing Facebook Lives. So instead of getting that face-to-face relationship, they're trying to build relationships through audio and video.
Through educating.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent on that. Give. The more you give, people will see you, they'll start to listen. You might, even through educating, I would think you would get people that maybe weren't even thinking about a franchise, but after they listen a few times to a podcast or a Facebook Live, they're like, you know what? I'm ready to make a change. I want to own something that's mine.
Yeah, I think it's really all about content.
Why don't companies want to get the most out of their marketing spend? And you and I have talked about one of the reasons they're not using all their marketing dollars is because they like to keep things in separate silos. And so I know you can help us out with that. Why is it important that companies stop doing that?
Well, I think it's an important point that you pointed out here, is that historically, all of this data sits in separate silos. Imagine, let's paint this picture together. Your CRM data, your prospects, your leads sit into your CRM. You have web data that sits in a CMS. Your emails, your opens, your clicks sits in an ESP, in an email system. Your transactions sit in an e-commerce system. So just imagine you have all of these touch points, all of this data, and historically they all sat in separate silos and in separate systems. And not only did they sit in separate systems, but people managing the data or owners of the data sit in entirely different departments.
Yes.
So it's something that, by choice, they historically inherited by having all of this. So, why is this so important to connect all the dots? At the end of the day, if you can connect all your data and put it into one ecosystem, this will enable marketers, this will enable every single person on your team, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, business development, management, can really look at the insights and activate the data the way that they want to activate it.
Yeah. And it's so important. And I've seen it where I've gone into publishing companies and each magazine will keep their information separate. Or like you were just talking about, we've all heard about marketing and sales working together, but you saw the companies where marketing's over here and they're doing their thing. Sales is over here and they're doing their thing. But no one is really coming together to talk. And that knowledge that they could learn from all the divisions coming together, it's priceless. Like I mentioned, I was talking to a client the other day and he says, I get most of my leads, I just use LinkedIn. And I'm like, no, you need to have your own database. And I said, well, don't you get the people that come in and register, if he's an auction company, register for the auction or buy? He goes, well, I have those lists, but we haven't done anything with them. And I'm like, that is great. Because that's such valuable information that he's utilizing.
I think some people, because I'm seeing this a similar thing with a firm, that I think some of the LinkedIn marketing or, Facebook marketing is, quote, sexier. So they think it's sexier than using the existing data that they have and their existing customers and prospects that they have. But financially, in the long run, it makes more sense to build and nurture the customers that you have, as well as supplement it with the other things. But to always be going after new customers, I mean, I'm thinking on the subscriber because most of my clients are media, but the cost is so much more to the cost per customer for acquisitions than it is to keep reselling to the same customer if they are a buyer and if they are engaged.
Right. Well, and also with LinkedIn, you don't know when they're going to change their logarithms or how they handle their data. And that's why you have to have something that is yours. And I agree with you, but I think, send out those emails to your house list or your database and supplement it with LinkedIn.
Right. I think it should be supplement, not the sole thing.
Right.
I can't imagine, imagine magazines that have 50,000 subscribers trying to replace 50,000 subscribers every year when the universes aren't that big. It's so much more cost effective and time effective to renew people than it is to acquire new people.
What have you seen over the years that has really inspired you, or you have seen to be quite creative in marketing?
Well, I mean, I think that we can all agree now that it's about digital, right? That years ago when you and I started, or not even that many years ago, there were more pieces of mail in your mailbox than there were emails in your inbox, right? And then we did a whole flip-flop, and now we're back here. And I think that that's great. I embrace digital. I think everybody embraces digital. But I think it's important to not remember our roots, because that sounds a little corny, but I think that the old is new again, right? That I think sometimes we need to start thinking about digital is everywhere. We are inundated by your email inbox, okay, what device am I looking at it on? Is it on my mobile? Is it on my iPad? Am I watching it at night? Whereas sometimes the old-fashioned way is coming back into play. I'm not saying solely, but I think that sometimes that piece of mail in your mailbox is not a bad thing. It can reinforce the digital. And I've been talking to clients about, bring some of that old school back.
Yeah.
Who isn't, I'm sorry, but who isn't excited on your birthday to go open the mailbox and there's a birthday card that you can actually take out of the envelope and look at?
Well, I don't know if I get too excited on my birthdays anymore. Because the number keeps going up. So, if you told me the number would decrease, maybe I would get excited on my birthday.
I'm with you there. But I think that, I think there's something to be said about holding that piece of paper in your hand again.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that digital isn't still the way to go or the way to engage people. But I think now being a little bit more creative and throwing a couple of those old school techniques back in are not a bad thing. And that, whether that includes something in your mailbox or, especially if you're a cataloger, a catalog mailer, who doesn't like to just sit down and flip through the catalog? Right. There's a different feel to it. You can almost disengage from digital and sit down and look at the catalog, the same as reading that birthday card.
Well, and also with a catalog, I find you end up buying something you really weren't set out to buy, because I know.
Right, because you're not searching.
Right, because if I go online, I'm searching for a specific thing. Let's say it's a turtleneck, because, I love to ski. If I'm looking for a turtleneck, but if I'm looking at the LO Bean catalog and all of a sudden I see those warm merino wool gloves,
Right, exactly.
I buy it. So same on the business side, but I agree. And there's not as much competition in the mailbox that there was years ago.
Agreed. And you can still engage people digitally, but using an old school technique like the mailbox, right? So you can throw out a digital campaign that says, check your mailbox. You remember when you used to see that on TV and you would, when we had 3 TV channels instead of, 80 or 600, but
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not that old.
Well, I'm talking about our parents, right? Okay, that makes it talk about. There you go. So, when it said, watch your mailbox, you know, and who didn't want to watch the mailbox? What's
Yeah.
coming in the mailbox? You know, so you can combine these different techniques, you know, the same way that you would do, you know, you and I are all about nurture, right?
Yeah.
We are all about, you know, gone are the days when you can send out one email
Oh yeah.
and expect to get a 25% response rate, you know, engagement rate. It's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
I wish it was.
Yeah, I say
Yeah.
that to people all the time. One-off promotions are not going to work anymore.
No.
You know, I'll stand
No.
behind, you know, marketing and digital and direct, but it's not one-off. It's like what you said before, it's a nurturing.
And then the other thing we've seen as a company is that more and more revenue is going into traditional media, so print magazines and that side of things and advertising, rather than obviously the event side and etc., because there's been harder things to do on that. But yeah, we're seeing a return to old-fashioned, if you like, media, which is fantastic, because again, people were saying that there wouldn't be print publications a few years ago, and if anything, they're getting stronger and stronger.
Yes, I was talking to a publisher last night, Heat Treat Today, and he kept his print going all along. And he said it was hard, but really it's paying off for him now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Is there were times where we were thinking, well, does the readership still need a physical copy of a magazine?
Right.
But I think there's something tactile in a magazine, and it's something that people still want to read and pick up and thumb through. And
well, also a magazine like yours, you know, it's not like you're just selling a pair of shoes.
No,
so
absolutely, it's a very niche vertical industry,
yes.
so it's of importance to our subscribers. So yeah, we're actually finding that side of the business is doing very well at the moment, and long may that continue.
Yes, well, this publisher, he was saying, you know, it's very easy if you send someone a digital magazine that they're too busy and they don't look at it, it goes down. But if the magazine is sitting on your desk, you know what, you will pick it back up. You know, you have those slow times, you might read one article and put it down, but it doesn't matter.
I mean, maybe I am showing my age a bit here, but I still get excited when post comes through the letterbox, whether that be at work or at home. You know, it's always still quite nice to have my name on the envelope and be able to open it and there be something in there. So I think there's always going to be traditional print publications, and certainly recently that's been really good for us.
Yeah, because I would imagine with the different entities, you definitely have different type of branding. And yeah, and the branding, you know, the people, it's funny, I'll sit down with a lot of clients and they'll say, oh, well, how many leads did we get? You know, that's all they'll worry about. And they won't. And I said, well, this is how many leads you got, but think about all this branding. And they're like, I don't want to hear about branding. And I'm like, oh, you're being short-sighted when you do that. And
I would agree.
Yeah, because the branding is what builds the trust.
Yes, and these people are, your brand speaks to certain people, and so long as you deliver on your branding and your product lives up to your branding, your marketing, your sales efforts, then these people who first come across you due to your branding and marketing efforts will become your biggest fans, your advocates. Yes. They will tell their friends, and that doesn't really matter in my experience whether we're talking about a hotel guest, a restaurant guest, a day spa client, a gym member who's paying relatively low cost, coming in, working out 3 times a week, or some of our other clients are in the financial field and it's about investment opportunities, and you know they're completely different, but you need to know, you need to understand your core values, and once you've got that, be consistent, and then your clients are not disappointed in what you're talking about, showing them, and ultimately selling to them.
Yes. Well, I see you're doing a lot with video.
Video. We made a conscious choice to kind of get on the video bandwagon, if you like, a few years ago, and we now well, for a number of years we rarely put out anything that is a static image. It will either be a video, live video, or an animation, or a film that's made up of stills, but it's made into a video for the different platforms and the websites and everything else. It's a wonderful medium, especially now when everyone's used to watching Netflix series one after the other, just one more episode.
Yeah.
So people that don't want to read tons of texts or huge articles or anything like that, they can see it. You're telling the story still, you're being persuasive, hopefully, but it doesn't feel quite so salesy. We haven't got buy now things coming up on the screen. Obviously that's the ultimate aim, but we do work on making sure that we have different content, different videos, speaking to the different personas, the different audiences for each category, so and each business.
And I think that one thing that was interesting is we started to see some benefits of the virtual experience versus the in-person. So one thing that was really cool is that a lot of people come in cohorts from their organization, which can be really difficult to schedule. Mm-hmm. So if you need 4 people from your team to come and travel, there's days at the beginning, at the end for travel, and it's sort of a longer time to be away from work. So people were able to just kind of maintain a lot of their personal and professional commitments during an online program. So even though it's a day, you can take a break and walk your dog or visit your kids. And
that has to be hard to get, 10 of your employees on the same schedule, but also all ready to go off to a program. And so the virtual offered a little bit of a convenience there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I think it creates a bit of a more intimate experience. So when you're sitting at home and everyone's right here in front of you, it feels comfortable and like you're not in a big classroom feeling intimidated by like the more talkative people. So I think we saw kind of more even engagement across the whole group.
Oh, interesting.
Cool.
I know I did a virtual conference recently, and I really felt like the speaker was talking directly to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's just me being silly, but I'm like, look, they're looking at me. They're talking only. It was like we were having a one-on-one meeting. So I could see how it's effective, but that other side you just brought up, where people that normally would not speak up now felt comfortable to share their voice and their ideas.
Yeah. And you could use the chat if you don't feel like talking. And our faculty worked really hard to figure out ways and to kind of utilize all the collaborative tools that Zoom has and outside technology. So there's a lot of breakout rooms and small group collaboration. We use polls. Some faculty have used the virtual whiteboard so people can jot down their ideas or do kind of like design thinking exercises with virtual Post-it notes. So our faculty got really creative, and people have said that they still feel like they were able to form connections by being in the small groups. And some of our faculty also did like a faculty lounge midday or at the end of the day where people could just hop in and chit chat.
Just casually ask a question or something. Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah.
So you can still have that one-on-one interaction with the faculty, which I think is one of the best benefits of these programs because our faculty are amazing. And I think a lot of them were worried about how it would work online, but they're all awesome. And I think it was really, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would think also because you're talking as an executive education, you've got people who are already out in the workforce. And so they're taking your class, but they already have their issues or challenges that they're trying to deal with at work. And if you have time for that lounge time with the professor, you could ask detailed information about your specific, company or law firm. So would you say then a podcast can definitely be used for enhancing a company's brand and also lead generation, or one or the other?
Absolutely can do both, especially on how you target and how you plan to use that podcast. Many people just use podcasts for thought leadership. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we know. If you want to know more about that, reach out to me. Some others will actually do it. I call it the sub-level commercials. It's kind of an infomercial, but it doesn't sound like a sales pitch. It sounds purely educational. I have another gentleman who is also a cybersecurity person who specifically targeted one of his podcast episodes for New York State, lawyers in New York State, with a certain number of things that had to worry about this very tough New York State law that was specifically went after lawyers. And he spoke for half an hour on what this law is, how it affects lawyers, and all the horrible things that could happen if you don't pay attention to this law. 24 hours after he posted that podcast, he got a frantic call from an AmLaw 100 law firm in Manhattan going, "We think we need you." 24 hours after that meeting, he got a 6-figure contract. And that was 2 years ago. That one podcast is evergreen content. He's still getting calls saying, "Oh my God, I need to talk to you about this law." So he used that purely for not only education, but lead generation. But if you go into your podcast saying, "Oh, I'm going to get so many leads out of this," that's not really what podcasts are for. People who listen to podcasts for education and entertainment. They're not looking to listen to your infomercial. Seriously, when's the last time you turned on the TV going, "Oh, I hope there's some good infomercials on tonight"? So if they hear anything that sounds like a sales pitch, most podcast listeners will immediately nope out and go to one of the other 2 million podcasts out there. So you have to make sure your podcast is educational, hopefully entertaining as well, because no one wants to listen to a podcast and be lectured to. And so you have to have something of value to say, of value to your potential listeners. That's when I tell new clients, why is anyone going to want to listen to your podcast? It's great that you have lots of things to say, but why is anyone going to want to listen to you? What is the value you're offering and what you're telling?
Right.
When you look at the sector, if you look at the pharma, the biopharma and the biotech sectors, they're really quite savvy when it comes to marketing. And so different trends work differently depending on the company and depending on what each company is trying to achieve. So with that in mind, DDW offers a range of different marketing options. So we have, it goes from print and digital advertising, e-newsletters, content marketing packages, webinars, podcasts, and then we're the only title in the market to also have an app to add into the mix. And throughout all that, what we're very careful to do is to make sure that we have a consultative approach with our clients. So we take each client individually, we look at what they're trying to achieve commercially and through the content that they're putting out, editorial content as well. And we look at their expertise and we work with them to create an optimal solution. So there isn't really one size that fits all in terms of our clients. For example, our clients and then the readers as well, they're at the forefront of the sectors. The audience, the researchers, and like you said, you only have to look at what's happened over the past year to realise how important this sector is. And on top of that, it's really important for the academic and commercial labs to be aware of what's going on in terms of the latest research, the latest studies, the technology, and the market opportunities that are out there. And they need to be able to work efficiently, optimally, and reduce the time to market as much as possible.
Well, I hope you have gotten a lot out of listening to these industry experts about their great takeaway when it comes to strategy. Now, take this time before next week to think about your target audience. Really think about your target audience so that you understand like what industry, what job title, what publications they might be reading, what conferences they might attend. Get as granular as you possibly can about your target audience. And then think about what content you have available to use. You can always repurpose content and it can be put together. So think about what quality content you have available. And we'll talk next week. Listen into this episode, subscribe, hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss it, because we're going to talk about how to execute it. How do you start to really understand your target audience, where you should go look for sources, and how you should implement it on what channels that would resonate with them the best. Until next week, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking about executing next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the World Innovators Podcast. For more information about today's topic, email us at dpeterson@worldinnovators.com or call 860-210-8088. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.